Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What can this slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. With I'm gonna burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump continues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all.
These losses stay with me. They fester, Jerry.
What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you. Toadstool Sports. This will be the college basketball edition. February 28th, the last day of February. I don't think it's a leap year, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm taking a leap with some of these plays. I don't know. I think I'm going to have 5 plays here. I literally just woke up. I'm so out of it right now, dude. I did the handicapping, fell asleep. I'm like, I got to do the show. I have to come back after this and do NHL, NBA. Haven't even looked at those yet. Don't know how many plays I'm going to have there. Mr. Pinsey, what's up? Thanks for hanging out. All right. I'll talk about what happened with last night's plays on that show. How about that? Just so we can get right into college basketball here. That was Wednesday night. But yes, I had too much of it. Correct. The THC beer, I should have moderated that more. I rarely ever partake in that, and it all built up too much. But that was Wednesday night. All right, let's get into this college basketball. I'm going to try to talk about all the games that matter. Well, I don't think I could even do that, really, but, all the big games, all the TV games, my plays. I have a few additional leans. You know how I do it. We have maybe a little bit of a smaller schedule here on a Saturday because the MEAC is pretty much done, and they played most of their games last night, so they're not in action today, I don't believe. But what you have to pay attention to at the end of the season here is the conference tournament setup. So in the small conferences, you have teams that have already clinched the 1 seed or clinched whatever seed they are in those conferences. So those teams might already be looking ahead to the conference tournament because they can't improve their positioning at all. And those conferences, you have to win the conference tournament to actually get in. So, oops, you see one of my plays down there as I was searching for it. Oh, God. So that's something to keep in mind. You got to keep in mind which teams might get eliminated from being in their conference tournament. So that's all a thing, too. A lot of things to keep in mind on these final Saturdays here. This will be the final, completely full Saturday because some of the small conferences will be playing their conference tournaments by next weekend, I believe, and then the bigger conferences will have their conference tournaments that week. All right. Hopefully that all makes sense. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. ESPN, noon, number 11 Virginia at number 1 Duke. This is a huge game in the ACC with both of these teams are rolling. I believe Virginia's only 1 game behind Duke. Although if you look at the number in this game, the odds makers are telling you that Duke is significantly better than Virginia as their 10-point favorite, even though Virginia, really good record. Virginia has not really been battle-tested to a large degree, which has been one of my knocks of Virginia. I believe, I think they even lost to North Carolina, so I don't know. This Virginia team, their resume is actually not that impressive, even though they have very few losses. 79% of tickets, 92% of the cash on Duke. Looks like some of the money is coming in on Duke. I don't really have a feel for the side in this game. I think both teams are going to show up. Virginia's coming off a very impressive blowout win over NC State, who is not a bad team. They had a pretty bad game, but also Virginia is pretty legit on the defensive side of things, as they usually are. Yeah, they're better on defense than offense. So is Duke, in fact. So that's going to kind of lead me to what I think about this game in a second. Duke is coming up putting up 100 points against Notre Dame. Absolute blowout. So both teams are coming up looking really, really good. Hard to pinpoint a side here, man. I mean, the number does look big, so I think the public might come in and think, oh, it's 2 ranked teams. You know, this is a huge number here, and they might actually be tempted to take the points with Virginia. I'm not sure that I would do that. The money is coming in on Duke. I think I might agree with laying the points there, but I actually think I like the under, even though the total is up to 141, and I know under would kind of lead you towards leaning towards Virginia, I know, but I think an under kind of makes sense in this game because everybody kind of likes what they see out of both teams. Duke just put up 100 points. Both teams are better on defense than offense. Both teams play slow. So I could see this being a slow defensive game and falling into that type of game. So, and it being kind of a playoff atmosphere type of game. So that's kind of what I think about that game. Noon on ESPN2, Colorado's at number 5, Houston. Gonna guess that Houston finally ends their losing streak in that one with a win over a very inferior team. Colorado having to go on the road here, but they do have 2 wins in a row. They've been playing all right, although they got both of them at home. In fact, their last 4 wins of all, or last 5 wins, in fact, have all come at home. I believe Colorado has not won at all on the road in conference play, if I'm not mistaken. I know they won 1 game, Arizona State. They only have 1 conference win on the road. Their other 5 are all at home. So, yeah, they are definitely better at home, using that elevation to their advantage. I think you're probably going to see a focused Houston team here. I mean, they just lost to 3 really good teams. But that game against Kansas really got away from them, and I gave you guys Kansas as a play in that game. I just thought Houston might not have anything left by the end of that game, just playing 3 massive games in a row, man. Back at home here against an inferior team. Yeah, Houston's probably going to win this game. Are they going to cover a huge number, though? I don't know, man. It's up to 20 points. Total in the 140s, low total at 140.5. Houston, we know they play slow and they focus on defense. I don't have a good feel for the side in this game. I mean, I do think you're going to get an effort out of Houston, but they also don't need to win the game by 20 points. You know what I mean? They just need to get the job done and get back on the winning side. I'd probably I guess I'd lean towards taking the points with Colorado, but I don't have a strong opinion on that at all. It wouldn't shock me if Houston won that game by more than 20 points either. Seton Hall at UConn, Fox Sports 1 at noon. This is a game where I think I would fade UConn if I was going to play this one. UConn is coming off a ridiculous revenge win over St. John's, beating them 72-40. And I think St. John's had I think for most of the second half, they didn't even make a field goal or something. Something absolutely ridiculous happened in that game. It was a really, really insane win for UConn. Some of it had to do with St. John's playing terribly as well. I don't know if I quite want to fade UConn in their final home game, though, at Stores. But that is what I would do if I would play it. I think they will be in a letdown spot of that. They got a big win over Villanova in the prior game, too. Unfortunately, it's not a sandwich spot because they only have Marquette next. And again, final home game is a thing. Teams do get a little bit of a boost in their final home game to celebrate the seniors. UConn did already beat Seton Hall, but they didn't beat them by much, actually, on the road. They only beat them by 5. So UConn actually didn't cover. So I guess you could maybe make the argument that UConn might slightly take Seton Hall seriously for that reason. But I would lean towards taking the points here, man. And this is likely to be a defensive game, a slow game. Both of these teams played better defense than offense. UConn's a top 10 defensive team, and Seton Hall's just outside of the top 10 on defense. They're just a miserable offensive team. UConn's not as good on offense as they are on defense either. Both teams play very slow, so that does have the makings of an underdog cover in this game. Seton Hall just beat Georgetown at home in their last game, so that's fine. They got some momentum coming into this one. And yeah, those are my thoughts on it, man. I would lean towards Seton Hall. The number is at 14 for UConn, which is quite large. 75% of tickets, 90% of the cash on Connecticut. And at least Lenardi's bracketology still has Seton Hall as a bubble team for the tournament. So, they might have reason to show up for that reason as well. Give them a little bit extra effort there. It's a very low total, around 130, 131. So, I wouldn't agree with the cash percentage in that one. I think I would take the points with Seton Hall. Big Ten Network at noon, Iowa at Penn State. Iowa coming off a nice, easy win over Ohio State. They got Michigan and Nebraska up in their remaining 2 games, Michigan in their final home game. So there is the potential that Iowa overlooks Penn State here, man. Having to go on the road to play this really massively struggling Penn State team. Penn State coming off another loss at Nebraska. Can't really blame them for that, but now they're back at home. Coming off 3 road games in the last 4 games. And last time they were at home, they lost to a bad Rutgers team. So I think you're going to see an effort out of Penn State here, man, at home. It's not their final home game yet, but when teams return home and they're on a losing streak and they lost their last home game, we usually will get focus out of them. You'd be asking to lay points with Iowa, a slow-down team on the road. I wouldn't want to do that. I would lean towards taking the points with Penn State, but this is not really anything that I would really want to consider. 69% of tickets, 82% of the cash on Iowa. I don't agree with that cash percentage. Iowa's up to 9.5 with juice there. But I would lean towards taking the points in that one. CBS Sports at noon has Boston University at American University, BU at AU. These 2 teams did already play once this year. I don't even see where it is. BU lost at home to American by 2. American is the better team here. BU on a nice run, actually, right now. They've won 6 of their last 7 games, I think is what that is. Beat Holy Cross in their home finale, but now they do have to go to American for this, which I think is Washington, D.C., if I'm not mistaken. American, this is their final home game, and they get a TV game, so I think they probably will show up for it. They did just lose at home to Lehigh in the prior game, which is not a great loss. So, and the fact that they played close against BU, and BU's been hot recently, and they're tied in the standings, I'd probably lean to American here. American, I believe, let me see here. They also got season swept by Lehigh, so Lehigh is 1 game ahead of American in the standings, but American actually can't move up. So actually, this game is pretty much for 4th place, and I don't know if that means a bye in the Patriot tournament or not. I forget what the structure is there. I don't know if they have buys in their tournament, but I mean, I think I don't remember though, because I think maybe the 4 seed gets a home game or something like that. So I think this is why this game is on TV, because it is the battle for the 4 seed. So I think it does kind of matter to both teams, but I think I'm going to lean to American there because I think they are probably the better team. They haven't looked as hot as BU as of late, but BU is not that good, man. American's only laying 2.5 though, so the odds makers are kind of telling you that BU is actually the better team, but I don't think they are. Ken Baum does have American as the better team by 20 ranking spots or so I don't know what's going on there. I don't know. But, it's not a strong opinion from me. Noon, CW Network, NC State at Notre Dame. NC State coming off a really hideous loss. Both of these teams are coming off horrendous-looking losses to good teams. But NC State got blown out at Virginia. Now, they do have Duke on deck. So that is a big game. This is going to be their 2nd straight road game. And with Duke on deck, that's a monster game. And NC State, even if they lose this game, they're probably still going to make the tournament. Notre Dame doesn't have a whole lot left going on here. They are trying to avoid missing the ACC tournament, though. So Notre Dame, I think, will have a little bit of motivating factor here. And one thing I'll say about that, you got to be careful with teams like, if this team wins, they're going to clinch this spot, or if this team wins, they're going to avoid missing the tournament. That means that team might be overvalued in the market because the market knows that. Everybody knows that. But in this case, Notre Dame's going to be an underdog. So you know what I mean? So that's different. Like, an underdog's usually not really going to be overvalued, and you're saying that team's motivated to win the game and they're getting points. So that is a scenario that I will be willing to jump on. as opposed to like laying points with that team when the pressure's on. I don't like doing that. Now, Notre Dame, they're coming off that horrendous loss, which was a loss here on the show for me against Duke. I can't believe that that's what happened in that game. It looked like a really bad spot for Duke, a sandwich spot, and Notre Dame won 100-56. Or Notre Dame, lost 100-56. They're staying at home for this one. I think the spot does set up better for Notre Dame here, just a little bit. The number dropped from 7.5 to 6.5, 55% of tickets, 80% of the cash on NC State, but I do not agree with that cash percentage. I would lean towards taking the points with Notre Dame in that one. ACC Network, noon, Florida State at Georgia Tech. Florida State coming off a couple of big games where they upset Clemson on the road, and then they played their main rival, Miami, in a revenge spot for Miami, because Florida State actually won at Miami earlier this year. Florida State was hanging around in that game, man. The game was within 2 possessions pretty late in the game. They lost by 10, but that was a big game, man. And now they're coming off of that. Those couple of huge games, and they got to go to Georgia Tech. I don't think it's a great spot for Florida State here, man. Georgia Tech coming into this, trying to at least do something here, man. With 2 home games left, they've lost however many games in a row this is, 8 games in a row. They still have a chance to maybe avoid missing the ACC tournament, although highly unlikely, I think, because they're alone in last place right now, and the bottom 3 missed the tournament, so I think it's pretty unlikely. But I think you'll probably at least get an effort out of them here. The spot for Florida State is more questionable. I would lean to Georgia Tech here. Florida State's laying 6 on the road. 67% of tickets, 99% of the cash on Georgia Tech. I agree with the cash percentage in that one, even though it's probably not accurate right now. Georgia Tech would be the way I would lean there. USA Network at 12:30 p.m. Fordham at VCU. Fordham coming into this game on a 4-game win streak. They're playing all right recently. They'll probably give you a game against VCU, although they did actually give VCU a game back in Fordham earlier this year. VCU only won that game by 4. I'm presuming the VCU didn't cover, but maybe they did. Let me see. No, they did not. 7.5-point favorites in that one. So VCU actually might take Fordham seriously because they barely got by Fordham in the first game at Fordham. So maybe VCU will show up for this, but I do think VCU is in a bad spot, which I'll show you in a minute. I do still lean to Fordham here. I think they'll bring a good effort against one of the top teams in the conference. VCU, on the other hand, is off of losing a long win streak. I think they'd won 10 games in a row or something like that. They finally lost in a huge step-up game against St. Louis, and they had that lead in that game into the second half. I know because I gave you guys VCU, and they couldn't even cover by the end of that game. But I think VCU could be in a pretty massive hangover, man, and they finished the season with George Mason and Dayton, which are both huge games as well, even though they did already beat Dayton once this year. They lost to George Mason, so that will be a big revenge game on TV, but they do get to host this game on TV, although it is in a busy Saturday card. And VCU, you're going to be asking them to lay a ton of points here in a spot where they might be hung over for 2 reasons, because they're coming off a big game where they had the lead in the second half over St. Louis. My concern really would be that the game was over, like, before it was over, though. You know, like, they didn't actually take St. Louis to the wire, unfortunately, for my bet. If they did, I'd probably give you Fordham here, and I still lean to Fordham. When teams lose these long win streaks, a lot of times they will be hung over here. I think it might be a sandwich spot as well because of what they have upcoming. The line dropped from 13 to 12.5. Total in the low 140s. That's pretty low. Fordham's going to try to ugly it up and slow it down. VCU does try to play a bit faster, but the total is low. So, yeah, my lean is towards taking the points with Fordham in that one. All right. Army at Lafayette. I'll talk about this because Lafayette just had a huge win over Colgate. Big upset win, which was kind of like their game of the year type of thing, I would say. And they already beat Army at Army. Army is total ass. So I think Lafayette could be in a letdown spot. That was a huge game. And I believe they're Pennsylvania rivals with Colgate as well. And Colgate is usually one of the best teams in the Patriot League. They still kind of are this year. So that was a big win. It was like an 8.5-point upset. So my hesitation, I guess, is that Lafayette is in their final home game, which might still give them a boost, and that Army is just absolute, like, yeah, they're pretty much dog shit. They're terrible. So those would be my concerns here, although the line does take that into account, and it's not like Lafayette is that good. Army will be trying to get a win to close the season, although they just lost their home finale by 2 to Bucknell, so Army did put in an effort in that one at least. Now, in the Patriot, I don't believe any team misses the tournament for their league. I could be wrong about that. But I don't think Army is like on the verge of not making it. They are tied with Holy Cross in last place, but I do lean to Army in this one. Even though it's Lafayette's final home game, that was a huge win for them over Colgate. The line's set for 4 to 3.5. I agree with that move. I would take the points with Army in that one. I know how ugly that is, but yes. Okay. What other games do we want to talk about here, man? I'm going to try to get through some of these. Missouri at Mississippi State in the SEC on the SEC Network at 1 p.m. Missouri, I gave you guys Missouri in their last game, and they got the nice home upset against Tennessee, even though they got out-rebounded, I think, dramatically in that game. That was a huge win for Missouri. Now they got to play a second road game in 3 games, and they're coming off beating Vandy, playing Arkansas reasonably competitively on the road, and then beating Tennessee. So Missouri's coming off a run of 3 huge games in a row. They already beat Mississippi State at home by 5, although I'm guessing they did not cover the number there. No, they're 6.5-point favorites. But even so, it could be a little bit of a revenge spot for Mississippi State. It looks like it could be a letdown spot for Missouri. Now, I know Missouri does need to keep giving you an effort, though, because we know that Missouri is a bubble team in the tournament right now. But this is one of those situations where I think everybody knows that. And Missouri's a road favorite here, so you might be having to lay a little bit too much of a price with Missouri just because everybody knows they're fighting to try to make the tournament right now. I would lean towards Mississippi State in this one. Mississippi State is coming off a pretty ugly 100-75 loss to Alabama. Nobody wants to give up 100 points to anybody, although Alabama is an elite offense, though. Now back at home for Mississippi State here. They did actually win the last time they were at home. They beat Auburn. They've had some pretty bad performances at home as well, but I would lean towards Mississippi State in this one. Missouri has 75% of tickets, 72% of the cash, so they are a very public side. I would take the 1.5 with Mississippi State in that one. Would not shock me if they get the win in that one, actually. And I think the public would be pretty shocked. But again, it looks way too easy to play Missouri, right? Oh, this team is on the bubble. They got to get this win. They got to make the tournament. They just beat a couple of good teams. You know, it's a pick the winner price team with a way better record. Yeah, it just looks way too easy to play Missouri there. And nothing is that easy, man. TNT True TV at 1:30 p.m. Georgetown at Xavier. These two teams did already play once earlier this year. I forget who won the game. Where is it? Xavier won at Georgetown, in fact. So this will be a little bit of a revenge game for Georgetown after losing at home to Xavier. Georgetown's on a 5-game slide as well, losing at home to Marquette. So it might be good for them to actually go back out on the road. Forget about it. They do have a huge game against St. John's next, but I don't see Georgetown overlooking a game when they've lost 5 straight, and this Xavier team beat them in their own place. Xavier's coming off a game at Providence, coming back home for this one. They did lose last time they were at home, but it was a close, pretty good performance against Villanova. This is not their final home game. I think I would lean into the road revenge angle in this one and lean towards Georgetown. We don't see the percentages yet. Xavier is up to a 4.5-point favorite from 3.5, but I would lean Georgetown plus the points in that one. Number 24, Louisville at Clemson, ESPN2. Louisville's coming off a big TV game where they lost in North Carolina. Pretty big game. Now they're playing a third road game in 4 games, which is not going to be that easy for them to do. I don't think they're going to overlook Clemson, though, because, you know, Louisville, they did just have kind of a bad performance on national TV, even though it was a big game against North Carolina. Clemson is above them in the standings as well, so I don't think they're going to overlook Clemson here. Although Clemson's on a 4-game slide, and they just had a bad loss at home as a favorite to Florida State. I think they're going to show up for this one, man. This is also going to be a contrast of styles here, where Louisville, we know what they do, man. Even though they play decent defense, they score a ton, they play fast. Clemson is really much more defensive than offensive, and that's kind of their problem, that their offense just isn't really as good. But they're going to try to ugly it up, play slow, and play defense, and sometimes that is the type of team that I tend to look towards. And coming off a horrible loss at home to Florida State as big favorites, whereas Louisville is coming off a major effort game at the very least. I think Clemson is the right side here. Louisville's a 2-point favorite. I would take the points of Clemson, though. You're getting points at home with the slow-down, better defense, too, with Clemson. So 80% of tickets, 87% of the cash on Clemson. I would lean that way. Louisville's not really that bad defensively, though Clemson is, according to Ken Bum, several ranking spots better on the defensive end. But yes, in that spot, Clemson would be my lean there. Clemson's also sliding, man. So they're at home as an underdog, and they kind of need the game a little bit more. And I know, again, need isn't exactly what you want to look at, but when it's a team that is going to be motivated like that and they're getting points, that is something that you do want to look towards. ESPN at 2 p.m., number 25, Vanderbilt at Kentucky. This is a pretty interesting one. There's a pretty big revenge angle here, I would say, because Vandy beat Kentucky in embarrassing fashion at Vandy earlier this year, 80-55. You're going to remember if a team beat you in an embarrassing way like that. You're going to remember that the next time, man. So I do think that Kentucky is going to be up for this one, man. Vandy, we know they're going to be in the tournament somewhere. Kentucky is a little bit more in question, although I think both teams are pretty safe. But I think it does come down to the revenge angle motivation here. I think that game is probably a bit of an outlier. Highly doubt we're going to see something like that this time. Vandy is coming off a decent win over Georgia, who looks like they should be a tournament team at this point. Going on the road to Kentucky here. People also might look at this and want to play Vandy because it's a small line. Vandy's actually an underdog here. So technically Kentucky does fall into that unranked favorite scenario where they're an unranked favorite against a ranked underdog here, but it's only Vandy being ranked 25th. The odds makers are still telling you Vandy's the slightly better team here, but the public's going to look at it and think, oh, I'm getting a 1.5 with the team with the better record, the team that's ranked, the team that won the first matchup by almost 30 points. It looks really, really easy to play Vandy here, man, so that's another reason why I would not want to do that. Kentucky just ended a 3-game losing streak. The majority of those games were on the road. All but one of those games were on the road, or 2 out of the 3, I should say. They just won on the road at South Carolina. Not a win that's going to make them overconfident, but it will be a game that should give them some positive momentum and just the right amount of confidence coming back into this one. I like Kentucky here. I would money line it on Kentucky probably. They're a 1-point favorite here now. 64% of the cash on them, 50-50 on the tickets. So looks like we are going to have the money indicating on Kentucky in that one. I agree with that one. All right. CBS Sports at 2 p.m. Again, I mean, if people want me to talk about some of these other games, I can. Oklahoma State at Cincinnati, but, I'm trying to get this done because I do have to do the other sports here today, too. I haven't talked about any of my plays yet either. Let me make sure I'm not missing any here. I don't believe so. All right, Oklahoma State at Cincy, on CBS Sports at 2 p.m. Oklahoma State just broke a 5-game losing streak with a home win over West Virginia. I like when teams end losing streaks because I think it will give them a little bit of momentum coming into the next game. Cincinnati is now kind of a bubble team here, man, and they're laying points, which I don't love Cincinnati laying points, even though they do go up-tempo. They can't score. Like, they play good defense. And it would be interesting to see them get into the tournament. But Cincinnati, on the opposite side of Oklahoma State here, they just lost a win streak. So they had a 4-game win streak. But they'd beaten Kansas in a massive upset. And then I think were in a letdown spot after that and just didn't have anything left against Texas Tech. And Texas Tech beat them by margin. So it wasn't a close game, but Cincinnati kind of ran out of steam, and now Cincinnati does have their home finale next against BYU, which will be a big game on deck. So, you could kind of make the argument this is a sandwich spot, although I prefer it when that game they just played was a much, much closer game and a huge effort, which this one wasn't, but I would still lean towards Oklahoma State in this one. for all the reasons I said. Cincinnati down from 10 to 9.5 in that one. Oklahoma State would be my lean there. All right, Big Ten Network, 2 p.m. Oregon at Northwestern. Oregon's coming off a huge win over Wisconsin. Nice home upset. Now they're going out on the road. They do have a big game against Illinois up next, so there is a potential they overlook this Northwestern team, who I do still think is underrated here. Problem is, Northwestern's also in a letdown spot because they just had a huge road win at Indiana as a huge underdog, and they are also in a sandwich spot because they have Purdue on deck. So both teams are in sandwich spots here and coming off upsets. And Oregon is having to travel to an unfamiliar environment here and having to cross time zones. So that makes it a little bit worse for Oregon, I think. For Northwestern, you know, it's not a good spot. I wouldn't be able to lay it with Northwestern here, but I think I would probably lean that way. Northwestern -4 here. I think an over maybe is worth a look here because both teams are in such bad spots. A lot of times that can come, that could show itself on the defensive end of things. Total is 143 right now. It's gone up a little bit. But it's a really bad spot for both teams, so I can't do it. But again, I think the home team does have a little bit of an extra advantage in a game like that where the road team is very unfamiliar with that type of travel spot. Going to that venue, I should say. Oregon just hasn't been in the conference that long. I don't even know if they've ever played at Northwestern since they moved into this conference, so into the Big Ten. So, yeah, slightly to Northwestern, but I don't love it at all. Over would be probably my preference in that game. Fox Sports 1 at 2 p.m. UCLA at Minnesota. UCLA is coming off another nice win against their rival USC after a huge win against Illinois in overtime. They did not suffer the letdown. Maybe the letdown comes here because they're going on the road to face this ugly Minnesota team, and they have their final home game after this. So UCLA has to travel to Minnesota just for this. They have to travel just for this one game. Then they're back home. They're probably in the tournament at this point, and they're back home against Nebraska for their next game, which is a huge game, and then USC again to finish the season. So this does look like a flat spot in their schedule. Minnesota is coming off a loss to Michigan, although they covered. That was a win. Finally, I'll mention another win for me on the show here. Minnesota with the easy cover against Michigan there. Michigan was in a bad spot off the Duke game and had that Illinois game last night on deck where they looked good last night. Minnesota, I think they'll probably show up at home. An ugly game, and I think both teams like to play slow. UCLA is down from 2 to 1.5 here. I would agree with that move. I lean towards Minnesota in this one as a small home dog. 83% of tickets, 100% of the cash on Minnesota. I agree with Minnesota in that one. Okay. What else did I want to talk about here? Gardner-Webb in South Carolina Upstate is only interesting because Gardner-Webb has one conference win on the season, and guess who that came against? Yeah, it was South Carolina Upstate. They have the bad distinction of being the only conference team that lost to Gardner-Webb this year. They lost by 2 on the road. And now this being their final home game, I think USC Upstate probably remembers that, and they probably get up for that game. So I would lean towards USC Upstate there, but they're having to lay 12.5, so they can get their revenge without covering. But Gardner-Webb really is that bad, though. So I think USC Upstate might want to come in and make a statement in that one. Okay. Wow. I haven't hit any of my plays yet. Is that really true? I don't even, where's my first play? I don't even see it here. This is getting crazy, man. It's like I'm losing my mind. Did I just not get enough sleep? Where's my first play? All right, it's coming up soon. All right. CBS at 2 p.m. I do like this game. This game, I considered this game for my card. San Diego State at New Mexico. San Diego State's coming off a monster win over Utah State. It was a revenge win. Utah State's first place in the Mountain West. San Diego State pulled into a tie with them. Now they're going on the road to New Mexico. Not an easy place to play at the Pit. And they already beat New Mexico at home. So it is a little bit of a revenge angle here for New Mexico here. And New Mexico might have been looking ahead in their last game because they're coming off a pretty bad loss at Nevada. Although Nevada's a competitive team, though. They're a decent team, so it's not a terrible loss, which is kind of my one hesitation with it is New Mexico did lose a win streak there. That was still kind of a big game against Nevada, and San Diego State still might get up for a team that's one game behind them, you know what I mean? But I do like New Mexico in this game still. Coming off a loss, or San Diego State's coming off a huge win. I would lean New Mexico in this one. And they might go into their old New Mexico ways and try to speed this game, or, well, their current ways too. But San Diego State actually is faster this year than what we're used to tempo-wise. But they're still slower than New Mexico, and I still consider them to be a slow-down team. I think if New Mexico is going to be able to speed them up, that would be beneficial to New Mexico in this one, although the total's fairly low in the 140s. But I would lean to New Mexico here. They're at 2.5 or 2. We have 75% of tickets, 93% of the cash on San Diego State, but I disagree with that market percentage there. New Mexico is my opinion in that one. And, yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about that game, but, yeah. You might be able to money line New Mexico in that game, too, I guess is the other thing I was going to say. All right, ACC Network at 2 p.m., Boston College at Miami. This is a road revenge angle because Miami already won at Boston College, although BC played pretty competitively, though. So I think Miami didn't cover in that one. But BC finally just ended a huge losing streak. They lost, I think, 8 games in a row or something, and they won in crazy fashion against Wake Forest. If you saw the end of that game, it was absolutely ridiculous, where BC was winning the game by 5 with 20 seconds left, and then they lost the lead. Wake went on a 6-0 run because I think they hit a 3. BC threw away the inbound pass, and Wake hit another 3. And then BC had to pretty much win with basically a buzzer beater. It was an insane ending to that game. But BC, they're showing with some effort, man, because they're trying to avoid missing the ACC tournament. I don't know when the last time they missed it would have been, because they're usually, even though they're not good, they're usually in the tournament somewhere. They usually make a little bit of noise in the tournament. So I think you will get an effort out of BC here for those reasons. It's a third road game in 4 games, though, which is not that easy. Miami is coming off winning a rivalry game. They're coming off a couple of big games in a row, man. They played Virginia really close. Then they beat Florida State in a rivalry game. Although Florida State did almost upset them, well, somewhat. Like, late in the game, it was fairly close still. But Miami does have SMU and Louisville up next to finish the season. So, and this is not their final home game. So, this does look like the spot that means the least to Miami in their remaining schedule. So, I will lean to Boston College here, plus the points in this one. Miami's down from 16 to 15.5 here. Don't think BC is going to win the game, but it's a low total. I would lean towards taking the points with them in that one. All right. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to skip some of the games that are, less interesting here. First of my plays, let's go. This is going to be a sandwich spot. We're going to the MAC for this one, and we are going to lay points with Buffalo, -5.5 against Central Michigan. Even though the money looks like it's not agreeing with me, at least the initial move went from 6.5 to 5.5 here, but Central Michigan, first of all, they're a bad team, and I know earlier in the season I was saying Buffalo's not as good as their record looks, but Ken Baum at this point has Buffalo as actually a pretty unlucky team now, so I think that'll help us here. But look at Central Michigan's scheduling spot, dude. They just went to Kent State as double-digit underdogs, and they almost pulled off the outright upset and fell just short. And you know that I talk about when a team puts in an effort like that and they fall just short, and that was against the third-place team in the MAC, Kent State. And actually, Central Michigan beat Kent State earlier this year, but that was a huge game, dude. When a team falls just short like that as a huge underdog, I think they wind up in a flat spot after that. But it gets worse because, well, they got to go to Buffalo, which is kind of a weird travel spot. I mean, nobody really wants to go to Buffalo at this point. Central Michigan is playing a third road game in 4 games here, and they have a huge game on deck, which is their senior night, their final home game, and it'll be against Akron, who is the best team in the MAC, although they're in second place, because of Miami, Ohio, getting an absolute scare last night and still winning. Dude, just come on, man. Dude, Western Michigan had that game last night against Miami, Ohio, and they fouled on a 3, handed Miami, Ohio 3 free throws, and then for some reason, down 1, Western Michigan intentionally fouled with 37 seconds left, even though they were guaranteed to get the ball back. I don't get it, man. Although they got lucky and Miami only hit 1 of the 2 free throws, and Western Michigan tied the game again, and then Miami had to win on a buzzer beater, but whatever. That was last night. Central Michigan is in a sandwich spot here, man. Huge game on deck for them against Akron. Yeah, I don't like the spot at all for them here. I like it because we get to play Buffalo. Buffalo, I think they're going to show up for this one. This is not their final home game, but they're coming off a loss to Akron. They've lost a decent amount of games recently. You can't blame them for losing on the road to Akron. It wasn't a close game. They lost by double digits, so I think they bounce back here at home, and they might not take Central Michigan lightly in a spot like this. So, yeah, we're going to lay it with Buffalo here. I think Ken Bum kind of bears this out, too. Buffalo, they're not a good defensive team, but they are close to the top 100 on offense. Ken Bum does have them in the bottom third in luck, so they are pretty unlucky. Central Michigan is even unluckier, though, so both teams are unlucky. But Central Michigan is just bad on both sides of the ball. Even though Buffalo is really bad defensively, they're the only one of these teams that actually has a reasonable offense. So that's the other thing to be keeping in mind in this one. And tempo-wise, Buffalo does play a bit slower, which I don't love with laying points, but I think if they could frustrate Central Michigan, they might be able to still cover that number there. So I like Buffalo in that one. All right. I was going to talk about the Northeast Conference because there's a lot of weird stuff going on, but I'll talk about it when I talk about the New Haven game. I'll talk about some weird stuff going on with how the Northeast Conference sets up. Or Northeast Conference, I guess. The Northeastern Conference is the Colonial. All right. And I'm going to talk about the Binghamton scenario, and I talk about another American East game. So you guys can wait for that, I guess. Again, you could shout out another game if you want me to talk about another game. Queens and Central Arkansas is an interesting game. This is a big game for both teams, man. I mean, this is somewhat for second place in the Atlantic Sun. Central Arkansas still has a chance to overtake Austin Peay, by the way, because Central Arkansas beat Austin Peay in their last game. But that does mean Central Arkansas could be in a letdown spot here, which I'll talk about in a second. Queens, they're on a nice little win streak here, 4 games in a row that they've won. They are on the road here for the 3rd time in 4 games, though, so that's not that easy to do. They did lose at home by 10 to Central Arkansas already, though, so they are in a road revenge angle here, and Central Arkansas is in a difficult spot, even though this is their final home game, so that would be one concern about leaning towards Queens here, although I do lean towards Queens here, but in the road revenge angle, and I think Central Arkansas is in a much more difficult spot, but it is still their final home game, so sometimes teams do get that boost when they're in their final home game. But Central Arkansas just beat Austin Peay on the road, dude. That was a monster win for Central Arkansas because it kept them in the running for the 1 seed and the regular season title in the Atlantic Sun. But they would need to win this game, and Austin Peay would need to lose to Bellarmine today. And I'm going to talk about why I think that might actually happen today. So it's not all over for Central Arkansas, but I do think Central Arkansas will be a little bit overvalued here. They are going to have to play 2 huge games in a row here. So I do think the spot is better for Queens. Central Arkansas is only laying 2 with juice, so the odds makers are actually telling you Queens might actually be the better team here. I'm going to lean towards Queens plus the points there as well. Like I said, not on my card, but it's an interesting game. Next up, we will put this one on the card, and that is going to be the next best bet. And that is going to be Bellarmine at plus 5.5 against Austin Peay. I think it's mostly 4.5s out there, but I'm probably okay with that number too. Austin Peay just lost a huge win streak, dude. I think they won like 12 games in a row. They only lost 1 conference game way earlier in conference play when Lipscomb was better, when we thought that they were better than they actually are, let's say. But you know what? I talk about this. When a team loses a long win streak, it's like they're not used to losing anymore. So a lot of times they can be hung over after that. And that was Austin Peay's final home game. It was a huge game against Central Arkansas. Huge effort there, and they lost that game to the team that was closest to them in the standings. That's going to be difficult for them to bounce back from that, man. And they're playing a Bellarmine team they already beat by 20 points. So I like Bellarmine in this one, obviously. But if we look at what happened in this first game, Austin Peay shot out of their minds in this game, dude. 58% from the field and 53% from three-point range. And they had 28 free throw attempts to 12 for Bellarmine. So this game was kind of a huge outlier, although, yes, Austin Peay did out-rebound them as well, and they had the lead for the whole game. But even so, they shot a ridiculous percentage in the game, dude. I think there could be some form of regression here. Bellarmine, again, they actually had more field goal attempts, although that was because they didn't get to the free throw line very much. But I think maybe the free throw disparity will even out here. I know that didn't happen with George Washington last night, and I'm pissed about that. But I like Bellarmine here, man, to get this thing done. It is their final home game. They're just playing for seeding, but they get to play the top team in the conference, man, in their final home game. Like, this might be like their Super Bowl, which I should have mentioned that with Canisius, man. I should have given you guys a play on Canisius against Merrimack last night. I think they won the game outright. That was one of my stronger leans on the show yesterday. I'm pissed I didn't add it. But Bellarmine might sort of be in a similar mindset here, even though, of course, Austin Peay has not wrapped up the conference or anything. But Bellarmine, final home game here. They've lost 5 straight games, so I think you know you're going to get an effort out of them here, even though where they fall in the seeding doesn't really matter that much, I don't think, at this point. But I think the fact that their home finale, senior day, gets to be against Austin Peay in quick revenge, and they catch them in a bad spot. Yeah, I like Bellarmine here, man. Austin Peay, by the way, is quite lucky, according to KenPom. They're 66th in luck, so they're a very lucky team, even though they are the better team. Bellarmine is much more of a slow-down team. Bellarmine is a really lopsided team. In fact, they're the worst defense in the country, according to KenPom, which I don't like at all, and it's very strange to see that with a slow team. But the fact that they're a slow-paced team, I think, should help keep them in this game when they're getting a bunch of points. And their offense is actually good. So Bellarmine is a very strange team, dude. But they're unlucky, according to KenPom. They're in the bottom third in luck, so if they could slow down Austin Peay, who doesn't want to go as slow, that might help them. So, you know, those are my thoughts on that game. Don't have a whole lot else to say about that, but yeah. The luck disparity is still in our favor in that one with KenPom there. ESPNU at 2 p.m., Tennessee State at Tennessee Martin here. So we have a Tennessee battle, and it's a big game because these teams are separated by one game in the Ohio Valley standings. I'm still not buying Morehead State at all, and it would be ridiculous if they're the 1 seed because they're not that good. And I forget if the 1 seed gets a home advantage at this tournament or not. That would be pretty ridiculous. I would be pissed. I think the tournament is at a neutral site, but I'm not sure. Anyway, this is a big game, though. Tennessee State did already beat UT Martin earlier this year by 7 at home. So maybe there'll be some revenge motive here for Tennessee Martin. I think Tennessee Martin is probably the slightly better team. Tennessee State just pulled off a road upset against SEMO. They've actually won they've had 4 pretty big games in a row, man. A loss to Morehead, and then they beat Lindenwood, SIU Edwardsville, and SEMO. So they played 3 of the better teams in the conference all in a row, and now playing another game and a second straight road game after pulling off an upset. Looks a little difficult to do, man. And UT Martin, this is their final home game. They just ended a losing streak with a win over a not very good Tennessee Tech team. By the way, I'll just mention it in this conference. Well, maybe I'll talk about Little Rock, and then I'll mention it because this conference has kind of a weird conference tournament set up as well. This game will be on TV, so I think UT Martin will get up for it for that reason too, because they don't host TV games terribly often. They're down from 4-3 here, though, which I think the line is actually maybe offering a little bit of value here, because I actually do think Tennessee Martin is the better team here. As I close the KenPom window, he's got Tennessee Martin at 197th, and Tennessee State 226, so he does have them as the better team. I don't know if there's an injury or what, but my lean would be to UT Martin in that one. Let's keep it going, man. Keeping it going. Let me see. I'm looking at what else I have left on my slate here to talk about. I don't have too many other games that I really have circled this week, so 3:30 p.m. TNT and True TV, Utah at Arizona State. Not a very interesting one. Utah on a 2-game losing streak. I mean, what else is new? They're not that good, but maybe they'll get up for this game because they did lose at home to Arizona State earlier in the season, so they have a road revenge angle here. They're coming off a pretty big game against Iowa State, but they did not play very close against them, so they might get up for this game. Arizona State might not take them seriously. Arizona State does have their final home game next against Kansas, so there's the potential they're looking ahead to that. I don't know how many teams miss the Big 12 tournament, though, so I guess that's another thing that we should probably be aware of. I don't know if Arizona State is in danger of missing the tournament or not. Actually, let me look real quick. I'm gonna take a look. You can look at Wikipedia for this. That's what I do, because Wikipedia shows the whole thing pretty much. Let me see. It looks like 16 teams get in. We have Arizona State, Colorado. Let me see. Does that mean 2 teams get left out? Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, so I think 2 teams get left out. I think that means Arizona State is pretty much safe, even though I guess there's an outside chance they miss the Big 12 tournament if that's the case. But I kind of lean towards Utah in the road revenge angle there. We don't want to overrate road revenge. It shouldn't be the only thing that you look at, but I'll consider it in this case. The money looks like it agrees with Utah. Arizona State down from 7.5 to 6, or 7 to 6.5, excuse me. 50% of tickets, 94% of the cash on Utah. I don't disagree with it in that one. All right. Bethune-Cookman at Southern. Bethune-Cookman has already wrapped up the 1 seed in the SWAC, so they don't have anything to play for at this point. Southern is still trying to get the 2 seed here, and they're in a 3-way tie right now. So Bethune-Cookman, yeah, they're coming off a win over Grambling, but I think they might pack it in at this point, man. They've already played their final home game as well. They're already the 1 seed. They don't need to beat Southern here. They did lose to Southern at home, though, so that's one thing that maybe will still motivate them in this game, that, we lost to Southern at home, so we're still going to get up for this game, maybe. They still might have a road revenge angle here, but I would not be jumping in and trying to play Bethune-Cookman here in a game where the motivation is definitely in question, because they might already start looking ahead to the conference tournament. This is Southern's final home game, and they're coming off kind of a bad loss at home to Florida A&M, where they were pretty big favorites, so I like Southern in that game, man. They should get up for a final home game, especially after a bad home loss, so they might have been looking ahead to this. Southern is up from a pick'em to 1.5 now. I would money line it probably on Southern. I just get them to win the game there. That's the way I would lean in that one. South Carolina at Georgia, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on the SEC network. South Carolina did just play fairly competitively against Kentucky, man. So they had a decent game there. They're coming up with that. Don't know what their effort is going to be like here, but South Carolina, I think they're probably looking like they're not going to make the SEC tournament, because I think a few of these teams miss it. I don't know. So maybe they'll put in an effort for that reason, and because they're playing a likely tournament team in Georgia, and they lost at home to Georgia already. So I don't think they're going to overlook Georgia. There are some motivating factors here for them. For Georgia, they're likely in the tournament at this point, although if they lost this game, that would be bad. But they're coming off a big game against Vandy where they fell short. They were fairly close in that game, I think, for a lot of it. And they have a huge game on deck. Their final home game will be against Alabama. So I would lean towards South Carolina in this one, all of those things being considered. Georgia's up from 11 to 12 here. We know Georgia, they score a ton. They play pretty fast, or really fast, I think. But South Carolina might be able to ugly this thing up, man. A lot of times the lesser team is able to slow the game down, and that is what South Carolina will attempt to do, I presume, to try to stay in this game. So I would lean towards South Carolina in that one. How many games do we have left to talk about? I think I'm close to the halfway point here. This ESPN game, I'm going to give out a play on this. This is one of my favorite plays of the entire thing, man. It might be my favorite play. So I'm going to give you guys that in a second. I'll take the midway break here, and I'll be right back. You guys can mull over what you think I think about Kansas and Arizona, but if you know me, you might be able to figure it out. Yep, inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight, it was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What can this slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm gonna burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump discontinues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. Oh, shit. Mr. Pinsey. Fuck. Sorry, man. Oh, shit. Now I have to go over those games again. Let me, oh, does that mean you missed my Arizona breakdown? Fuck. God damn it, dude. I hate myself for that. Shit. All right. Here's the quick rundown. Kansas is in a huge letdown spot because they just beat Houston. So I think they're going to be in a massive letdown spot. Arizona is coming off a very bad performance against Baylor where they almost lost, but Arizona had just beat Houston the game before that. So, and you remember I gave you guys plays in both those games. I gave you Kansas in the game against Houston, because Houston had a huge lead up of like 3 huge games in a row. And I gave you guys Baylor against Arizona because they had it sandwiched in between Houston and Kansas. So Arizona's now coming off a bad performance where they got a scare and almost lost. But it's even better than all that because that should focus Arizona enough. Kansas should be in a potential huge letdown after Houston. But it's even better because remember what happened in the first matchup. Arizona is the team that Kansas is the team that ended Arizona's undefeated season. Arizona was the last remaining undefeated besides Miami, Ohio, and Kansas was the team that ended their undefeated season. So Arizona absolutely is in a spot where the revenge matters for them. They absolutely have this game circled. And although I talked about they're getting a couple of guys back, Pete and Aristot are coming back, I still don't really think the reverse injured player spot is going to, take me away from this game. The money is agreeing with me on Arizona here. It's a great setup. I love Arizona in that game, man. So that's what I'm going to go with in that game. And I think the fact that Arizona is just adding some guys back, their rotation will run deeper, so I think that's good as well. Arizona's also the better team on both sides of the ball. They might be able to speed it up, which is going to not be what Kansas wants. So Arizona might be able to control the pace, speed it up, and they're the less lucky team, according to Ken Palm. And they're a more legit team. Kansas just doesn't really have that legit of an offense, man. The Texas Tech-Iowa State game, Texas Tech, I said this might be the spot where J.T. Toppin's injury finally comes into play because they've won 2 games without him, but they've won against some bad teams, and now they're going to Ames, Iowa, which is a very difficult place to play. I think Iowa State will be up for it, and the line is huge for a reason. I think in both these games, the public is going to be looking at it and seeing ranked versus ranked, good versus good, and thinking that like a line that's close to 10 is too many points. So I think the public isn't really going to want to lay the points, but I would lay the points in both of those games. And then I just talked about Nebraska, USC. Nebraska, weird spot for them having to go to the Pacific Coast and change time zones. They got UCLA after that, which might be a bigger game, which is at UCLA. And then they have Iowa in revenge to finish the season. So I think Nebraska, this is like the remaining down spot in their schedule, even though they're only coming off a win over Maryland. USC needs a win desperately, and they're getting points at home. So I don't like playing on desperate teams when they're getting points at home. That is a situation where that changes things because you know you're going to get an effort out of them, and they're falling out of the tournament picture real quick. It's going to be a big game for them, and if USC gets that win, their tournament resume is bolstered quite a bit just by that, and the line looks like it's a huge pros versus Joes scenario where it looks way too easy to lay the points with Nebraska. That is not what I would do. I would take the points with USC there. Yes, well, thank you, because I would have been doing the rest of the show that way. So let's try to get this done, man. I'm going to try to, I don't know if I can speed this up at all, but some of these games, I talk about the TV games, some of these games are just ridiculous. Howard and Morgan State, though, not a TV game, but actually an interesting game in the MEAC, because these teams are tied at the top of the conference. But look at the line in this game, and you tell me, are these two teams really even? Howard is an 8.5-point road favorite, and that line has gone down a little bit, but the odds makers are telling you who the better team is here, man. I've been telling you Morgan State is a hugely overrated team. I think they are. Howard actually lost at home to Morgan State already as a huge favorite, like a double-digit favorite, so there's a pretty significant road revenge angle here for Howard as well, so I do like Howard here, but Howard is coming up, putting up 100 points against NC Central, though. That was a really nice win for them, so I worry about that. I don't love playing teams when they're off of something like that. Morgan State's off of a game where I thought they were going to lose against South Carolina State, and they did still get the win. This will not be their final home game or anything, but all those things being considered, I'd still lean towards Howard there. They're down from 9.5 to 9 here. It's not a strong opinion for me, but the fact that they are laying that many points on the road against a team that they're tied with, that should really tell you what you need to know, that Howard is a significantly better team. But in a conference like the MEAC, I mean, laying road points, yeah, it's not going to be me doing it. But if you had to, get my opinion on it, that still would be what it would be, though. CBS Sports at 4 p.m. giving us a real great game here with Richmond at Loyola Chicago. I mean, yeah, okay. Now, I think in the Atlantic 10, I think every team still makes the conference tournament, I think. So these teams, Loyola Chicago is going to make it even if they wind up in last place. Richmond has been on a losing stretch. They did just win against St. Bonaventure. Still, they have a huge game in their home finale up next against Dayton. Maybe they won't pay attention to Loyola because Loyola is awful. They're way worse than anybody thought they would be this year. They've been horrible this year, man. Terrible, terrible season for them. They do have St. Louis on deck, but I don't know if they're going to overlook anybody with 4 straight losses here. They have one more home game after St. Louis. It is a revenge game against St. Louis and a big deal to play St. Louis. So there is the worry for both these teams being able to look ahead. I don't know what I would want to do with this game, man. Richmond's down from 5 to 4.5. 50% of tickets, 67% of the cash on Richmond. I don't even know what to think about it. The money is saying Richmond. I don't even know if I want to. I mean, I guess I will agree with that, but it's, very, very, very timid agreement there. That's a game that there was no way I was going to, I basically would consider that game to not even exist. I don't even know why that game's on TV. Fox Sports 1 at 4 p.m. Wisconsin having to go to Washington. And at least for them, like I said with Nebraska, at least for them, they're not having to play a late night game on the West Coast, which would mess with your biological clock. But with Wisconsin, though, they already had to do that because they're already out on the West Coast and they lost to Oregon. So maybe they will bounce back after that loss, but it is a third road game in 4 games. It is actually a 5th road game in 7 games, which is not an easy thing to do. They don't have a big game up next. It's only against Maryland. Washington is coming back home, so they're traveling cross-country. I think they probably had a week off, though, whereas Wisconsin, I think, had to play already in the middle of the week. Washington beat Rutgers on the road, and now they're coming back home. Washington, I guess, will be the more rested team, and of course, they're at least used to making trips like this at this point. The money is kind of coming in on Wisconsin, though. 83% of tickets, 94% of the cash. They're -2. My initial read on this was to lean to Wisconsin because they already are at home. Not really a strong opinion for me, but, I'll slightly lean towards Wisconsin there. Presbyterian at Winthrop. Now, this is a game where I'm like, well, Winthrop has nothing to play for now. They're locked into the 2 seed, and we faded them in their last game, and they lost to Charleston Southern. But this is Winthrop's final home game, although they did already win at Presbyterian. So, Winthrop, you could definitely argue they're already looking ahead to the Big South Conference Tournament at this point, man, because they're the 2 seed. They already know that at this point. They already beat this Presbyterian team on the road, so maybe you won't get a great performance out of them. The final home game aspect of it might have them stepping it up a little bit, but the real reason I don't want anything to do with Presbyterian here is look at their last game. They played really close against High Point, man. They almost pulled off the biggest upset that they could get in this conference would have been to beat High Point. Although it would have been to beat them on the road, of course. But being able to beat them at home would have been insane as well. And they came really close. It was a really close game towards the end of that game in their home finale, and they only lost by 6. So I don't know what Presbyterian's going to have left after that, man, even though, they have a road revenge angle here. I'm going to still lean to Presbyterian because I just don't see how you could justify laying 9 points with a Winthrop team that has nothing to play for other than final home game. So I'll still lean to taking the points with Presbyterian, but I can't do that in that spot either. 4 p.m., ACC Network, Pitt at Cal.
The two abbreviated names. Pitt is already out on the West Coast. They lost to Stanford in their last game, but now they're playing a third road game in 4 games, which is not going to be that easy to do. Cal might be in a bit of a letdown spot, though, because now everybody knows, oh, Cal is on the tournament picture now because they just beat SMU. You know, that was after beating their rival Stanford, who just beat Pitt, I think. So if Cal beat Stanford and Stanford beat Pitt, well, obviously that means Cal can beat Pitt. And Cal is now considered to be a bubble team for the tournament, so everybody knows, oh, Cal, they got to keep winning here, you know. Now, it is their final home game, so I think they still will have some motivation here, but I just think the stock is probably a little bit too high on Cal now after they did get that win. Could still be a bit of a letdown spot. If I was going to do anything with this, I would take the points with Pitt. Cal down from 8 to 7.5. 83% of tickets, 90% of the cash on them. But again, they're not a secret now, and everybody knows they're considered to be in the tournament picture now. And a lot of times when that happens, the team will be overvalued in that next game, and I think that's what we have going on here. And Pitt has already adjusted to the time zone, so that won't be that much of an issue for them. So I would take the points. Colgate and Navy, this almost made my card, man, because Navy, of course, they wrapped up the Patriot League 1 seed a long time ago. Colgate, they still need to win to get the 2 seed because Lehigh is 1 game behind them, and Colgate, believe it or not, lost both games to Lehigh. So Lehigh has the tiebreaker against Colgate. So Colgate needs to get this win to ensure that they have the 2 seed. And now normally I would say, well, when a team needs to win like that, they're overvalued, but I don't think that's the case here, man, because they lost at home to Navy. Everybody knows Navy is better than Colgate at this point. They're going to be an underdog on the road here. It's a road revenge angle, and yes, it is Navy's final home game, so that might be one reason why maybe they'll get up for this game. Senior night does tend to mean a little bit more to some of the service academies because they have guys that stay there for their entire college tenure and whatever because they don't do the transfer stuff at the academies. But still, Navy, you know, I mean, they already wrapped up the 1 seed long ago, and I know they've won like every game since then because these teams do stay disciplined, and that would be a concern for me. But you're getting 7 points here with Colgate, man. So I think if I was going to play this game, I would have to lean to Colgate. Navy up to a 7-point favorite there. But again, you know, these service academies, they stay disciplined, so a lot of times they don't fall into those particular letdown spots, and it hasn't happened with Navy so far. But we will see what actually happens. All right, my next play. Let's go. I got to get this show done, man. I'm trying to keep it at under 2 hours here. We'll see if I can. We're going to go real ugly with this one and take Bryant, and I know how bad Bryant is. I know Ken Pom has them as somewhat lucky as well, and they're just a horrific team, a bottom 20 team on both sides of the ball. So why are we doing this? Well, we're playing against NJIT, who is really not that much better than they are. They're in the bottom 50 or so teams in Ken Pom's rankings as well. They're ridiculously high in luck. They're the 7th luckiest team in the nation, according to Ken Pom. So believe it or not, we still have the luck disparity in our favor in this one. NJIT, you know I've been talking about them being fraudulent this whole time. And while they are fine on defense, relatively, they're still an atrocious offensive team, and you're asking them to lay points on the road. And I'll show you what the spot looks like in a second. I still think this is a game where we will take the points with Bryant here. Bryant plays slower than NJIT as well and might frustrate them a little bit. But this NJIT team, they're not as good as their record looks. They're starting to fade a little bit here. Yes, I know they're still playing for seeding, and I guess there's still a very outside chance they can get the 1 seed, I think. Let me see. Did they beat UMBC at any point? Let me see. Oh, actually, yeah, they could. I think they might be able to if they beat UMBC in their final game to tie UMBC. I think they might be able to do it, but that game is going to be huge, man, and that's part of the handicap here. Look at the spot for NJIT. They just had a huge home game against Vermont, which was a revenge game for Vermont, but NJIT played really close against Vermont, and we know Vermont is basically the class of the American East Conference. They almost always win the conference. They're right there in the standings, threatening to win the conference again. That was a huge game for NJIT. Now they go on the road to play Bryant, who they already beat 79-55 at NJIT earlier this year. So I doubt that they take Bryant very seriously after that. And if we dig into that box score, I don't even know if it was that misleading or anything. I mean, yeah, it kind of was. Bryant had a terrible shooting performance. 31% from the field, 24% from three. NJIT had 11 threes in the game, 41% from three. That's probably not going to happen again. The game was actually closer statistically than what the game looked like on the scoreboard. So, yeah, a little bit of a misleading result. But like I just said, NJIT also has UMBC on deck, and that is a monster game. It's a revenge game, but also UMBC is the top team in the conference, and that's NJIT's final home game. So they are in a sandwich spot between the top two teams in the conference, both teams that are above them. And it's revenge for Bryant. And this gets even a little bit better because Bryant is a home underdog. And guess what situation Bryant is in here? The American East drops one team from their conference tournament, and Bryant is not safe yet. They have to win. If they win today, they're safe. So that's another motivator for them because they risk, if Bryant loses their remaining two games and Binghamton has one game left today, and it's a winnable game for them against New Hampshire, I think. So if Binghamton wins, although of course New Hampshire also could fall out as Bryant could, but Bryant, if it winds up being them versus Binghamton, Bryant lost both games to Binghamton, so that is not a good thing for Bryant. So they cannot fall into a tie with Binghamton by the end of the season, which will happen if Binghamton beats New Hampshire today, which is possible, and if Bryant loses their remaining two games, which is also possible. And their last game is on the road, so there is a motivating factor here for Bryant, and they're a home underdog, so I like that. And it's their final home game. So I think you're going to see them get up for this game. And they've lost 4 straight games. So I think you will see them get up for this game, man, for all those reasons as well. Bryant is the play there. Looks like you can get 3 on this now. So I might wait on this because Ken Baum's numbers do actually have this at like a 3 or 4 point game. So maybe the number will go up a little bit more. Get whatever the points you can, you know. But I think we'll get at least 3 on that one. Now, I'll put it in the show description. But yes, Bryant is the play there. All right. Let's keep going with this, man. Portland State and Montana, kind of an interesting one. Portland State almost has the Big Sky regular season wrapped up now, but they did just lose to Montana State. Now they're playing Montana, who actually they lost to at home. So Portland State doesn't have many conference losses. One of them was at home to Montana. So this is a bit of a road revenge angle here. They are having to play the two Montanas here. They took a loss at Montana State that wasn't, it wasn't that close. So they might have a bounce back here against a team that isn't as good as Montana State that already did beat them. Montana might get up for it too, though, because this is Montana's final home game, and it is against the top team in the conference. So I don't see either team really lacking in effort here. So it's a difficult handicap. The money is coming slightly on Montana, up from Pick'em to Pick'em with juice. I could see it. I mean, Portland having to play both Montanas on the road is not really an easy thing to do. Maybe the revenge angle is not going to overtake the rest of the handicap there, and it is the final home game for Montana. So I'm not really going to disagree with Montana there, but there are definitely certain things about it that I don't love. All right. And I will just say in that conference, still keep an eye out for Northern Colorado, man, because I think they will make some noise in that conference. And I recommend it as a flyer, potentially grabbing them to win the Big Sky, like win the Big Sky tournament. And then you might get some hedging opportunities in the conference tournament if they make a little bit of a run in the conference tournament, because they are way better than they looked at the beginning of conference play. And I was telling you that the whole time. This Northern Colorado team is going to turn it around. They're actually one of the better teams in that conference. So something to keep in mind there. They're at Idaho today. I don't really have a handicap on that game. In fact, I actually kind of don't like Northern Colorado in that game. Well, fine, because I'm talking about it. I'll talk about it. But I want to get this show done, man. Northern Colorado just lost a long win streak, like a 7-game win streak. It wasn't a great team to lose to Eastern Washington, but still, when you lose a win streak like that, it might hang you over. They already beat Idaho by 8 at home, and they have a bigger game, I think, against Montana to finish the season. So it is not the greatest spot for Northern Colorado here. Idaho's staying at home. This is their final home game, and they just beat a bad Northern Arizona team. So the spot is better for Idaho here. Idaho's up from 1 to 2. Yeah, I agree with that move. I would money line it with Idaho if I was going to play that one. All right. 4 p.m. ESPN2, Texas at Texas A&M. This is an interesting game, man. These teams are both kind of on the bubble to make the tournament. It's a big Texas rivalry. Texas already lost at home to Texas A&M, so there is a bit of a road revenge angle here. Texas is actually stepping down in class now after they lost to Florida, which was expected. So maybe they will step it up for this game against Texas A&M. Texas A&M, not really as good as their record looks. And I think the public is going to come in and see A&M not really laying that many points here and think it makes sense to lay the points here, but I'm not so sure that it does. I've been telling you that Texas is a pretty undervalued team, and A&M has been pretty overvalued this year. A&M coming off playing on the road, losing to Arkansas. They are coming back home here. It is not their final home game yet. This is a tough call, man. A&M, like I said, 3.5 point favorite. The money looks like it is indicating on Texas a little bit, although they have 73% of the tickets as well, but 80% of the cash on Texas. So the money is kind of coming in on Texas here. I'll slightly lean towards Texas in that game. I don't think I would hate an over in that game either because Texas A&M likes to go fast. Both teams are very capable offensively, and the worst unit on the court is Texas's defense. Texas is going to try to slow the game down, though. Don't know if they'll be able to. The total's in the 160s, but if you like Texas, you probably have to assume they will be able to muddy the game up a little bit. But I still kind of lean over in that game, even though I kind of like Texas as well, which are kind of, in conflict with each other. All right. Southern Indiana at Little Rock. This is interesting just because the Ohio Valley drops the last 3 teams from their conference tournament, and Southern Indiana is already out. They can't make it. Western Illinois can't make it either, although what else is new? But that means Southern Indiana has very little, they're going to put all their effort into their final games because they don't play again after that. And they get to play spoiler a little bit to Little Rock because Little Rock could get knocked out if they lose this game, So Southern Indiana might be able to play a little bit looser here, but this is Little Rock's last game. It is their final home game, and they are going to need it, man, because they could get knocked out of the Ohio Valley tournament, which would be not really a common thing. Little Rock is usually one of the better teams in the conference. They did just lose a couple of close games. They played 3 big conference teams in a row. Tennessee Martin, SEMO, and Morehead State all at home. So those are all big games. So they might run out of steam a little bit here. And I think because everybody knows Little Rock needs this game to stay alive, I think they're laying too many points here, man, even though they should get up for their final home game. Southern Indiana, I don't love it for them either, though. They're playing a 4th straight road game, and they just had a close game on the road against Morehead. This is their last game, though. Southern Indiana's not playing again because they can't make the Ohio Valley tournament. And it will also be Little Rock's if they don't win here. And even if they do win, it still could be. Little Rock's laying 6.5. I think it's a little bit too much. I probably would lean to taking the points with Southern Indiana, but I guess you could argue that Little Rock is in one of those spots where they're not just win and you're in, you know what I mean? Because they have to win and they actually need help. They need the teams that are tied with them to actually lose as well. So Little Rock does need help. So I talk about that in football. Teams can play a little bit looser when they don't control their own destiny. So there is that. So that's not something I want, anything to do with really, but it's an interesting game. East Tennessee State is at Mercer, and as I've already mentioned, East Tennessee State has already clinched the 1 seed in the SoCon, so they don't really have anything to play for. Mercer is trying to get the 2 seed potentially still, I think. Mercer playing for seeding. They're at least trying to play for, getting a top 4 seed so they have that amount of buys in the tournament. East Tennessee did just lose at home out of Wofford in their final home game. Again, East Tennessee just had nothing to play for at that point because they'd already won the conference regular season title. So I told you, definitely you should not have laid the points with East Tennessee in that one. Wasn't sure I was going to I did not give out Wofford as an actual play there, but that is a strong angle playing against these teams that have already wrapped up the conference and they're losing. East Tennessee lost, Merrimack lost last night, North Dakota State lost to St. Thomas the other night. So it is an angle. It applies to this game as well, and Mercer already lost to East Tennessee, I believe, East Tennessee beat them by 6 at home earlier this year, so it's a little bit of a revenge angle for Mercer. Mercer, it is their final home game, and they're coming off kind of an ugly loss to Western Carolina. So, yeah, Mercer would have to be the way I would play this game. It's not on my card, but Mercer is up to a 1-point favorite. I would money line it with Mercer in that one. I think they get the job done, but no real strong opinion there for me on that one. Stephen F. Austin at Houston Christian. Stephen F. Austin just lost a long win streak. I think they'd won like 14 games in a row or something, losing to New Orleans. And you know, I talk about this. When a team loses a massive win streak like that, a lot of times they can be hung over in their next game. And they're going on the road to play a Houston Christian team they already beat this year by 18 points at home. So they might not take them seriously. So I do think it is a hangover spot. I would lean to Houston Christian in this one. It's not their final home game because they do have one more game against Lamar. But they're coming off of winning by 1 against a bad East Texas A&M team. I would take the points with Houston Christian here, +8 at home. The total is low in the 130s. So some quick thoughts on that game as well there. Okay. I forget what else I was even going to talk about here. I had something else in mind. It might have been back to that East Tennessee and Mercer game. I forget. Mercer is pretty close to being a play for me, though. Just, you know, if you're wondering how strongly I feel about that, that would be one of my... I didn't add it to my additional leans, but it probably should be one of them. All right. As far as these other games that I think are worth mentioning at all, let me see here. You know, North Dakota State, I guess, is a somewhat interesting game. It is a rivalry game. I don't think North Dakota is anywhere near as good as their record looks, but North Dakota State, they just might not care about this game because, again, they already wrapped up the Summit regular season title games ago. But this is their final home game. It is a rivalry. They did just lose pretty embarrassingly to St. Thomas, so maybe they will show a bit more effort in this one because nobody really wants to get embarrassed like that. And you probably, I mean, you might not want to go into the conference tournament on that bad of a note. They did beat North Dakota already on the road by 17, though, so I do still think North Dakota is going to have more reason to show up in this one, although I still don't think they're a very good team, but they're getting a ton of points here. They are playing a second straight road game. They did just play a pretty tough game at South Dakota State, and they played well in the game. So I don't really want North Dakota here because they were really close in that game as a big underdog. 9.5-point underdogs. They almost took South Dakota State to the wire. Even though they lost by 8, they put in a huge effort there. So I worry about North Dakota here. But there's no way that you could lay 12 with a North Dakota State team that really has absolutely nothing to play for here other than their final home game. They're down from 13.5 to 11.5 here. I would still agree with taking the points with North Dakota, but it's not something that could really make my card here. Delaware at Kennesaw, of course, you could make the argument that Kennesaw is in a letdown because they just got a big win over Liberty, who is still the top team in the Conference USA. Some hesitations here, though, would be that Kennesaw already lost at Delaware by 15. So, and that was interestingly coming off a game against Liberty, though, by the way. But it was back-to-back road games. These are back-to-back home games. So Kennesaw might still take Delaware seriously because they did lose badly to Delaware in that first game. Delaware's not that good. And it is Kennesaw's final home game. So those would be my concerns with fading Kennesaw off of that win over Liberty. Delaware has lost 3 games in a row. It's a difficult spot for them because it is a third straight road game. So, you know, it's a tough call here, man. I mean, I'm going to lean towards Delaware just because Kennesaw is in that letdown spot and they're laying a lot of points, up from 10.5 to 11 with a pretty low total in the 140s. But there are just too many conflicting factors in that game, so I can't. There's no way it's going to be on my card. That's at 5 p.m., by the way. We're into the 5 p.m. slate here. Almost getting done with the show. We might be able to do it in 2 hours. Number 19, BYU at West Virginia, 5:30 p.m. on Fox. BYU, of course, struggling a little bit as of late, and they're without Saunders here. They're coming off a really ugly loss at home to Central Florida, so maybe it'll be good for them to just leave and play a different game, but it's still a weird travel spot for a Utah team to have to go to West Virginia, and they're going to be laying points, and we know that West Virginia is a team that's kind of considered to be on the bubble for the tournament, even though I don't know about now because they've lost 3 games in a row, but this is their biggest game remaining, man. You got to think West Virginia will give you a huge effort here. And if they're going to try to make any case for the tournament, this is going to be a game that's going to be a huge deal for them. And it looks way too easy to play BYU as well. Like, oh, I get the ranked team basically just in a pick the winner scenario at 2.5. 63% of tickets, 72% of the cash on BYU. I would lean towards West Virginia here. BYU wants to go fast too, and West Virginia is going to slow the game way, way down, and the total is really low. And if West Virginia is going to be able to play their ludicrously slow style, ludicrous lack of speed, that might really frustrate BYU there. So I would lean towards West Virginia slightly in that one. It looks way too easy to play BYU in that one, but both teams, I think, are going to probably show an effort in that one. TNT, True TV at 5:30 p.m., Providence at Creighton. Providence already beat Creighton by 5 at home, so there is maybe a little bit of a revenge angle for Creighton here. But, the setup for Providence is coming up beating Xavier. Their final home game is next against Marquette. So, yeah, I don't know. It might be possible they overlook Creighton here. Creighton just had kind of an ugly loss to DePaul. I thought Creighton would bounce back after they got destroyed by St. John's, but they couldn't get it done, and they lost at home to DePaul. And now they're just staying at home here off of somewhat of an embarrassing loss, I would say. They interestingly lost to DePaul by the same score, 72-71, both times they played them this year, which is weird. But, yeah, I mean, I slightly lean to Creighton here, but the money's coming in against them. They're down from 4-3, but I don't know. I would kind of lean that way. It's still kind of a weird spot for Providence to have to go play in Omaha. So those are my thoughts there. What else do we have going on here? UT Rio Grande Valley, let me see. They're coming off a really good performance against McNeese, man. So they could be in a hangover here. And it's not their final home game yet either. So they're coming off a big effort. They were like double-digit underdogs on the road at McNeese. And they had a pretty close call against McNeese, man. That would have been a big win if they were able to get it. They actually already beat McNeese once and played them tough this game too. Now, they could be in a massive hangover spot here after that. But one issue is they actually lost to East Texas A&M already on the road, so they might actually take East Texas A&M seriously after losing to them once. East Texas A&M already played their final home game, so now they're playing out the stretch, going on the road here. I don't know how many teams of the Southland missed the conference tournament because I decided not to play this game, so I just didn't bother to handicap that. I probably should have, just so we know. But Rio Grande Valley's laying 10.5 here, man. It's a low total in the 140s. Coming off that huge performance against McNeese, I think I would lean towards taking the points with East Texas A&M. And Rio Grande Valley can win that game without covering the spread. So, all right, 5:45 p.m. Eastern. Very weird start time on the CW with Syracuse and Wake. Syracuse coming off 2 straight losses to Duke and North Carolina. Didn't have a great performance in either game. Maybe they'll show up for this one. They do have Louisville on deck, but yeah, Syracuse, I mean, they're not a good team, but maybe they're going to try to show something against Wake. Wake is coming off kind of an ugly loss, though, at BC. They were favorites, I think, in that game. I think it was a spot where Wake just didn't want to, they weren't totally awake, and they didn't want to go up post-Blizzard up into the Boston area and play Boston College up there, although Wake almost pulled off the win in the end, but they still didn't. But they do have Virginia on deck, which might be a much bigger game for them here. Wake is, I don't believe they're really in danger of draw. Well, I guess they could be, actually. Wake, if they do really, really bad in their remaining couple of games, and some of these teams below them actually do well, I guess there is maybe the chance that Wake does miss the conference tournament, although highly unlikely, I would say. I don't know what to do with this game, man. This is a very, very confusing game to try to handicap. Wake down from 4.5 to 4 here, so it looks like some early money coming in on Cuse. Wake did have to put in a bigger effort in that last game, and they do have a potential look ahead here, and it's not their final home game, so I guess I'll agree with leaning towards Syracuse plus the points, but I don't love it at all. And I apologize, the just dry air, and I might have to go get more water in a second here, man. 2 breaks in one show. I apologize. You know what? Let me do it because we have the next huge ESPN game on deck here, and I'll be sure to unmute my mic this time. All right. ESPN, 7 p.m. Are we up to 7 yet? No, 6 p.m. Number 17, Alabama. Number 22, Tennessee. Couple of things to keep in mind here. Tennessee, I believe, has won 5 games in a row against Alabama, including winning at Alabama this year. So there is a little bit of a road revenge angle here, and revenge angle for Alabama. But on the other side of things, you could make the argument that Tennessee just matches up well against them. And maybe there is something to that because this is offense versus defense here, man. Alabama is basically all offense. Tennessee is mostly defense. And you know me, I like defense. I usually like defense getting points, although Tennessee is actually laying points here, which is interesting. There are a lot of things to consider in this game, man. I think it's a big game for both teams. I think both teams will show up. The fact that Tennessee is a favorite here, I think, is going to throw people off, too, because everybody loves offense, and they're going to see that Alabama's higher ranked than Tennessee. So why is Tennessee a favorite here? I mean, yeah, they're at home. They get a decent amount of home court advantage, but I think Ken Bum will probably tell you, yeah, he actually has these two teams right about even. I was going to say, I thought Tennessee probably would actually be ranked higher than Alabama. But it is just a huge, it's a huge contrast of styles. And Tennessee wants to go slow. Alabama wants to go insanely fast. Tennessee is the much unluckier team, according to Ken Bum. So a lot of this has me leaning to Tennessee again in this one, man, even though it is a road revenge angle for Alabama. Alabama just put up 100 points. They put up 90-plus in 3 straight games. I mean, they're consistently putting up points like that. But when the last time they played Tennessee, even at home, they couldn't control the pace, and the game was in the 70s. So the pace was all Tennessee in that one, man. Tennessee might be able to do it again. They seem to just be able to do it. Tennessee's coming off a pretty ugly loss to Mizzou as well. And that was a game where I told you it was a sandwich spot. I gave you Missouri as a play. Tennessee played better than the score looks there. They did dominate the rebounds. I don't really know how they lost the game. But they were coming off that huge win over Vandy in the Tennessee rivalry, and they had this Alabama game on deck. So I think the fact that they dropped that game, it didn't look that good. I think all that being considered, I think I have to lean to Tennessee to continue their streak against Alabama. And the money seems like it agrees. Tennessee laying 4.5 down from 5, but 62% of the tickets are on Alabama, 66% of the cash on Tennessee. I agree with Tennessee in that one, man. All right, CBS Sports, 6 p.m., San Francisco at Pacific. This is an interesting one. This is the last regular season game for these teams in the West Coast Conference here. I think every team makes the tournament, though, in the West Coast Conference, so no team is going to be left out of the conference tournament. But the bye structure is crazy, where the top teams get byes to the semifinals, similar to the Sun Belt. San Francisco is coming off 2 straight losses, but it was Gonzaga and Santa Clara, although they lost both games at home. Those are really good teams, but I took the loss on San Francisco against Santa Clara. I thought it was a really good spot to fade Santa Clara. San Francisco still couldn't get it done. Now they're on the road at Pacific, and they already beat Pacific at home. So I don't know what we're going to get here, man. Pacific might show up for this because it is a home game on TV, and it is their final home game of the season, I believe. Yeah, so Pacific doesn't usually get a TV game like this on CBS Sports. and in their final home game. But my problem with Pacific would be they actually just played pretty close at Gonzaga in their last game. So they went pretty much all out trying to beat Gonzaga, lost by 9, and they were within like 6 pretty late in that game. So Pacific is coming off a monster effort there that might hang them over here. And that is pretty big. You know, San Francisco off the embarrassing loss. I actually kind of lean towards San Francisco in this one. Pacific down from 5 to 4. Money coming in towards San Francisco. Yeah, I won't really disagree with that one, man. All right. ACC Network, 6 p.m., SMU at Stanford. SMU might need to start worrying a little bit about their tournament picture here, although they're still in for now. But they did just lose to Cal, which wasn't great for them. Now they're on the road still. They're already adjusted to the Pacific time zone, though. They're playing Stanford, but they do have a big game against Miami in their final home game when they come back home. So that is something to consider. Stanford here, coming off a win over Pitt at home, staying at home here for this. I don't know what to do with this game, to be honest. It's not a game that is really on my radar. SMU's down from 3.5 to 1.5, so the money coming in towards the Stanford side. I don't really have much of a reason to disagree with that. SMU, if they lose this game, it's going to be interesting. They might be in a little bit of a difficult spot there as far as the tournament is concerned. But we will see. Cornell and Brown is somewhat interesting because, as I said, I thought it was kind of a weird situation for Yale last night. Yale seemed to be laying way too, it seemed way too easy to play Yale last night, laying a few points. And what do you know, Cornell pulled off the upset. That was a huge win from Cornell against Yale. Now, this is their final home game, so there are still motivating factors for Cornell here because final home game they might show up for because it's senior day, but they're coming off a huge win last night against Yale. Cornell might have the pressure on them because they're in 4th place in the Ivy right now. I mean, the top 4 teams make the Ivy tournament. So Cornell does need to get some wins here to make sure that they make the tournament, but they're playing a really bad Brown team that they already beat by 22 on the road. This does look like it could be a letdown spot for Cornell here, man. Brown doesn't have a whole lot left to play for, so they're playing out the stretch. They do have their final home game still remaining, but they lost last night pretty badly at Columbia. They're going up to Cornell now. For Brown, it's kind of difficult because they're playing a 5th road game in 6 games, which is not that easy either. But I think I would take the points with Brown if I was going to play this game. Cornell, 9-point favorite, but they do still have some reasons to be motivated there. It's kind of a weird situation there, man. And then we'll see how that whole Ivy League turns out with Yale and Harvard now in a tie again atop the conference, even though I think Yale is the way better team, but they played really close games against Harvard. So the Ivy tournament, man, it just seems like it's coming down to Yale, Harvard in the final. Although I think Cornell should be in that tournament as well. I think they are clearly one of the top 4 teams in the Ivy, but they got to get there. So it could be an interesting tournament. We'll see. All right. McNeese at New Orleans. This is an interesting game. McNeese is coming off a close call against Rio Grande Valley. And I talk about this. When a team has a close call, a lot of times it gives them a wake-up call. But that was also a revenge game because McNeese had lost to Rio Grande Valley the previous game, and they didn't do a whole lot better this time, although they did win. So I guess you could argue they're in a little bit of a letdown spot off of that. But they are also in a situation where they were a big favorite and they didn't play well. So maybe they'll step it up for that reason. But they're playing New Orleans, so they already beat at home by 19 points. So maybe they won't take New Orleans that seriously. But New Orleans is coming off a huge game at Stephen F. Austin where they did pull off the upset. They beat Stephen F. Austin on the road. That was a monster upset for New Orleans, and this is not their final home game. Although it's McNeese, so you're probably going to get up for a game against McNeese because they're one of the best teams in this conference. I think still the best. But it's going to be tough for New Orleans to give that kind of effort 2 games in a row like that. So I think you do have a setup here where New Orleans is coming off a big double-digit upset, and McNeese almost got double-digit upset. So I think I would lean to McNeese in this game. They're down from 8.5 to 7.5, though, so some of the money's coming in against them. And I don't really want to lay points in a situation like this, although I would lean slightly towards McNeese laying the points in that one, but that's not a game that I want really anything to do with. 6 p.m. SEC Network, Oklahoma at LSU. Not a great game here. Oklahoma did just get a nice win over Auburn, who I think should be a tournament team. We'll see. Now they're going to LSU, kind of a weird spot for Oklahoma here. LSU just ended a 5-game losing streak with a win over a bad Ole Miss team, putting up over 100 points in a crazy high-scoring game. I don't know if that was an overtime game or not. I can look in a minute. LSU's down from 2.5 to 2 here. Money looks like it's coming in on Oklahoma. 83% of tickets, 90% of the cash on them. I slightly disagree. I think based on the spot, I think I kind of would lean towards LSU in this one. Actually, you know what? Maybe not. That was a 2 overtime game. When was this game? It was 3 days ago. You know what? Yeah, that's pretty difficult. LSU coming off a 2 overtime game. Yeah, maybe I would scratch that. Just because of that, maybe I actually flip around and lean towards Oklahoma. If it wasn't a double overtime game, I think I would lean to LSU there. But that's a difficult thing to have to do, man, playing that much extra basketball. So we will see. ESPNU has Liberty at Jacksonville State. Maybe Liberty will finally bounce back here, but they have a 3-game lead, and I think one more win will clinch the regular season Conference USA title for them. Crazy they haven't already clinched it. They might be motivated, though, because they're coming off 2 losses, so they might be an angry team at this win. You can kind of explain what happened after they had that first loss. A lot of times, teams that take their first loss and lose a massive win streak, like I said, a lot of times they'll be hung over into the next game. And I apologize for not giving out that lean on the show, because that was a lean that I had to Kennesaw that day. This might be the spot where Liberty rights the ship, although they already beat Jacksonville State by 9 at home. They're probably going to be overvalued because everybody knows that one more win and they clinched the regular season conference title. You know Jacksonville State will get up for the game because they already lost them once. It's their final home game. They're coming off a win over Delaware that ended a 4-game losing streak, so that's a good sign that they broke a losing streak. They're not going to be overconfident here. Yeah, and it's Liberty, man. I mean, you're going to get up for a game against Liberty, so I think I would still lean to Jacksonville State here. Liberty -3.5, 75% of tickets, 91% of the cash on them. But I think I would probably lean towards taking the points there. Also, at 6:30 p.m. on ESPN2, TCU at Kansas State. Everybody at this point knows TCU is a bubble team. They're trying to make the tournament. Man, Kansas State really has not a whole lot left to play for. I think they can't even make the Big 12 tournament at this point, I think. Maybe they can with 3 games left, but still, Kansas State, they got a new coach here. Things aren't going well for them, but for TCU, they've won 5 out of 6. They look really good right now, but they have a huge game on deck against Texas Tech. Now, they did already beat Kansas State, but they almost lost to Kansas State at home. They only won by 2 as bigger favorites than that, so TCU might take Kansas State seriously for that reason. Kansas State, it depends on how much of a mess they really are here, man. They're returning home from playing 2 road games. And back at home, the last time they were at home, they won against Baylor. So at least there was that. They showed some signs of life there. And I think TCU is going to be a little bit overvalued because everybody knows what their tournament situation is and how they have to keep winning games. TCU is up to a 3-point favorite here. It does look way too easy to lay the points with TCU. 57% of tickets, only 56% of the cash on them, so less of the money on them. I'd probably take the points with Kansas State, all that being considered, but it's there are some conflicting indicators in that game that I don't love, so staying off of that game for sure. Garrett, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. You're not going to like what I have to say about that team. All right. Villanova at St. John's on Fox at 8 p.m. Villanova at number 15, St. John's. Villanova just beat Butler. So they got some new momentum coming into this. The last time they played St. John's, they did lose at home by 7, so they might show up for this game against St. John's. Now, St. John's is probably going to be pissed because they just had a horrendous game against UConn. UConn got revenge on them, but I don't know if St. John's is going to immediately bounce back because that was a huge game. Like, you get up for that game emotionally. And look at how many – St. John's had won like 14 games in a row, dude, and finally lost. And what do I always say? When a team loses a long win streak, especially when it's in a game that you at least get up emotionally for, I think a lot of times it puts you in a hangover spot. So I'm not sure that St. John's, even though they had a horrendous performance there, and I think they had like one field goal made in like almost the entire second half in that game, and Rick Pitino's going to be on their asses. I still don't know if this is if this is really a great spot for them here to really bounce back here. Pitino will be doing some things.
Yeah, inside, I want to kill myself.
I don't know if it's going to be enough, I actually lean to Villanova in this one slightly. St. John's, 68% of tickets, only 54% of the cash. They're up to a 7-point favorite here. I agree with the market read in this one, though. I would lean towards taking the points with Nova in that one, man. And hopefully it's not a Nova. Or a Nova, an explosion. Hopefully it's a supernova in that one, and you get the good performance out of Villanova, because I don't think Villanova is going to overlook St. John's, man. I think St. John's could be in a hangover spot after losing a monster win streak like that. All right. Duquesne at St. Louis, number 23 now, St. Louis. St. Louis had a really bad game against Dayton, man. They did not shoot well. I think they were in a letdown spot after that VCU game. I think St. Louis is going to show up with a lot of energy in this one, because they're playing Duquesne, and they played Duquesne already on the road, and they almost lost the game. Duquesne almost pulled off the upset. So I think you're going to see an effort out of St. Louis here, man. I think because they know they had a horrific game against Dayton. They know Duquesne gave them a scare the last time. It's not their final home game yet, but I would lean towards St. Louis in this one. I know it'll be a game that Duquesne should get up for, but I'm just not sure that I see it at this point, man. I know they've lost a couple of games in a row, but St. Louis is down from 16 to 14, but I think I could only see laying the points in that one with St. Louis, who I think will actually bounce back in their case, because they have lost 2 of their last 3. So that's what I think about that. You never like what I think about North Carolina. Well, yeah, because I think they're an overrated team. Oregon State at Santa Clara, CBS Sports, 8 p.m. Now, for Santa Clara, they don't usually get these big home TV games like this, and it is their final home game of the season. So for those reasons, they might show up here. But look at what they did last time they played Oregon State, man. They beat them by, what is that? By almost 40 points at Oregon State. That's insane, dude. They put up over 100 points. That is an embarrassing result for Oregon State, and that might mean Santa Clara might not really take them seriously. And Santa Clara is coming off. I know they got blown out against St. Mary's pretty much, but that was a big step-up game against St. Mary's, and it might be more of a reality check game for Santa Clara, where it's like, oh, shit, we're just not quite there yet. So I actually do kind of lean towards Oregon State in this one, plus the points. Oregon State's on a nice little run here, a couple wins in a row. Of course, Santa Clara's still playing for seeding here, but, they're going to be at least the 3 seed in the tournament, although they probably want that extra bye. I don't even know if they can leapfrog St. Mary's at this point. The teams are 1-1 against each other, so I'm not sure. Oregon State seems to have actually been playing better since they announced that their coach, whose name is Wayne Tinkle, is not coming back after their bad season this year. He is finishing the season, but, teams in that situation, actually, a lot of times they'll respond when they know that, oh, this guy's going to be out next year. Like, let's not let him, finish the season on a bad note. You know what I mean? A lot of times the team gets up for it. Like, we saw that with Long Beach State a couple of years ago. Their coach was fired, but he remained there to coach the rest of the season. And they won their conference tournament and got into the tournament. That was the one where I thought UC Irvine had won it again that year, but it wasn't. It was UC San Diego could have won it that year, and they didn't. I think Long Beach won it that year. So I don't know. Oregon State seems to be in kind of a similar situation of that. So I lean to Oregon State, man, in this game. Santa Clara's laying 17.5. No, I don't think they're going to lose the game, but I would take the points with Oregon State in that one if I was going to do anything. Fox Sports 1 at 8 p.m. Baylor at UCF here. This show's going to go over 2 hours, and I still have to come back and do NBA and NHL. Baylor at UCF. Weird spot for Baylor to have to go to UCF, man. And Baylor is coming up that monster effort against Arizona and having to go to Florida now, and they have Houston on deck. So they are definitely in a sandwich spot here, and they almost beat Arizona. So this is a pretty horrible spot for Baylor. So why am I not playing UCF? Well, UCF, they're not in a good spot either. They just went on the road and they upset BYU and just absolutely wrecked BYU in that game. So they're in a letdown spot off of that. Although, yes, I think the spot is worse for Baylor because it's an unfamiliar travel spot. UCF does not have a big game on deck. So I think the spot is worse for Baylor. I will lean to UCF here, but not strong enough to make my card. 71% of tickets, 77% of the cash on UCF. They're up from 1.5 to 2 here. I would money line it probably if you can find a decent money line on that if you're going to play it. Or when did Oregon State make the Elite Eight? What? That seems like a lie, Jeff. I don't remember that whatsoever. What are we talking about? Oregon State basically never even makes the tournament. And I think the last time they made the tournament, I think was in I don't know, it was the post-COVID year, and then some of the teams dropped out because of COVID. I think Oregon State forfeited against VCU in that one, if I remember correctly, or something like that. I don't even remember. It's kind of ringing a bell. They were like I think they made the Sweet 16 maybe as a 12 seed. Now I'm going to look it up. Hold on. I kind of remember that now that you're mentioning it. But it made, my bracket autism is failing right now. It made such little impact on me that I don't even remember it. But no, I think they made the Sweet 16 and lost as a 12 seed. Let me see. I might be wrong. This was 2021. Let's see. They upset Tennessee. I'm looking right now. In the 12-5 matchup, yeah, I remember that. They upset Tennessee. I don't even know how they did that. I think it was a flash in the pan, man. I don't think it was really legit. I don't know how they pulled off that upset. Yeah, you're right. They made the Elite Eight. But look at the run that they made. They got Oklahoma State in the second round, which Oklahoma State is a 4 seed. I mean, that's just kind of absurd. Like, Oklahoma State was not that good. It was just insane that Oregon State was able to beat Tennessee. But then they beat Oklahoma State, and then they beat an 8-seeded Loyola Chicago in the Sweet 16. I mean, come on, man. They had a pretty easy path in that tournament, and then they lost to Houston, although they did actually play pretty well against Houston. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think that was really a legit run for Oregon State that year. It was just kind of I just think that was a huge outlier type of deal there. And they got, some beneficial matchups to them after they were able to upset Tennessee. All right. Remaining games that I want to talk about here. Let's see here. Omaha and St. Thomas is kind of interesting because St. Thomas is coming off that big win over North Dakota State in revenge. St. Thomas is still trying to wrap up the 2 seed here, though, and they did lose to Omaha. So one of their few conference losses was to Omaha, and it wasn't that long ago. So they might want revenge here, and it is their final home game. So you probably will get an effort out of St. Thomas here. Omaha coming into this off a loss to South Dakota. They're playing for seeding, I guess, technically, but I don't think the difference in their seeding matters too much. This Summit tournament doesn't have really any buys either, so I don't think it matters that much. St. Thomas up from 11 to 12. I do think St. Thomas will actually show up with an effort in that one, it being their final home game and revenge, and still probably wanting to get the 2 seed just for, the tournament structure purposes. So I'll lean towards St. Thomas in that one. 8:30 p.m. on ESPN. Number 20, Arkansas at number 7, Florida. Interesting game. Arkansas coming off a win over Texas A&M. A fine win, but Florida's coming off a decent win as well over Texas. I don't think either team's in really a bad spot here. I don't think either team's going to overlook this game, but Florida's on a massive run right now, man. And they're winning every game by margin, too. The only game they did not win by double digits, they won by 9 against a pretty decent Kentucky team. And a Kentucky team that I think had beaten Florida 4 times in a row before that. So it's kind of a matchup issue there. I think the public's going to look at this and actually think, This is a huge line with two ranked teams, Florida up from 9.5 to 11. The public likes, ranked matchups like this. I think they think that it's going to be a competitive game, right? But I think I would only lay it with Florida, although the line is up a little bit to 11. So the value is a little bit gone after it was at 9.5. 67% of tickets, 51% of the cash on Arkansas. So Arkansas is a public underdog. And I warn you against public underdogs. That is not the way you really want to look at all. When the public likes an underdog, and that means you could fade the public and be playing the better team. A lot of times that is the way to look. I would lean Florida in that one. Not a strong opinion, but the last bet is next for me. Sorry, Garrett. We're going to finish this one off. We have a few more games to talk about after this, but we're going to take the points with Virginia Tech. I did find a 7 out there at am I allowed to say the book names? I guess if they're legal, I think I can. So Caesars, I think, was hanging the 7 there. I would still probably take it at 6.5, though, but I would probably wait and see if you get the 7, because 6.5s, I think, will be abundantly out there, and this game doesn't happen until tonight, and the public is going to be on North Carolina in this one. They're ranked 18th in the country, and I don't think they should be ranked 18th. Ken Pom, I think, might have them outside the top 25 still. They're a fine team, but they're not as good as people think they are, and, of course, they're without Wilson still. I think they are, right? Garrett, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if he's back yet. He might be back for some of the tournament action, but this is a bad spot for North Carolina, too, and I think they're overvalued, man. So I do think the public is going to be on them. Yeah, look at this. 73% of the tickets are on North Carolina. It looks like the 7s are kind of abundant now. The ticket percentage all on North Carolina, but look at the money. 79% of the cash on Virginia Tech, so the money is coming in on Virginia Tech. Obviously, I agree with that. North Carolina just looked really good on primetime at home. Everybody watched that game because it was kind of an isolated game, kind of like a Monday night football game. When teams have those isolated primetime games like that and everybody watches and they look really good, they're going to be a public side, and you do usually want to look to fade them. So I think they're going to be in a letdown spot off of that, but it's worse because their final 2 games are both huge against Clemson and Duke. So this is a sandwich spot, man. This is the only time they're playing Virginia Tech this year, and we know that Virginia Tech is like kind of a bubble team. Like, this would be a huge win for their resume for Virginia Tech at the very least. So I think you're going to get an effort out of Virginia Tech here, and they're a huge underdog. Whereas, like I said, on the opposing side, it's not a good spot for North Carolina. Virginia Tech just beat Wake to end a losing streak. They're only traveling now from Virginia to North Carolina, so not really a big deal there. They only play BC next, even though that is their final home game. But this is one of Virginia Tech's remaining opportunities to do something with their resume. So I like Virginia Tech here, man. We already know North Carolina is going to be in the tournament, so this game doesn't have as much meaning to them either. Virginia Tech is my final play on the card there. There you go. Oh, and I guess, I always do look at the Ken Pom stuff, I guess. Virginia Tech, they're 58th in the country, according to Ken Pom. They are a little bit lucky, but I think they're still less lucky than UNC is. They're a decent team, even though they're worse on both sides of the ball than UNC. Virginia Tech might try to slow the game down a bit and maybe try to muddy this up, because North Carolina does want to go a little bit faster, I believe. Actually, maybe I'm wrong about that. Both teams are Virginia Tech's still the slower team. North Carolina is outside the top 25 in Ken Pom's rankings. They're luckier. They're in the top 50 in luck as well. So even though they are the better team, they're a little bit overrated, according to Ken Pom. And again, you might get Virginia Tech uglying up the game a bit there. All right, 8:30 p.m. SEC Network. Ole Miss at Auburn. Everybody knows Auburn's trying to make the tournament here, although the public seems to hate Auburn and think that they shouldn't make the tournament because their record is really ugly. But they face the most difficult schedule in the country, man. This is a very battle-tested Auburn team. Auburn coming off an ugly loss to Oklahoma. I think they will win against Ole Miss here. They already did beat Ole Miss on the road by 12, though, so winning and covering is a different story in a game like this. Auburn's laying a bunch of points here. Ole Miss is just kind of playing out the stretch, but they are coming off that double overtime game, remember? So it's not exactly a great setup for Ole Miss here. So, yes, I think Auburn will get back on the winning side here. The money is coming in on them to cover as well. They're a 10-point favorite, 50-50 on the tickets, 86% of the cash on Auburn. I guess I will probably lean that way. But it is not one of my favorite opinions of the day, let's say, to put it mildly. All right. 10 p.m. at CBS Sports. I do like this game, and this game almost makes my card. Nevada at UNLV, but it is a rivalry game where I think both teams will show up. So that's one hesitation that I have here. But Nevada's coming off two really nice wins against Utah State and New Mexico, who are two of the top three teams in the conference, I think both standing-wise and power rating-wise. Big wins there. Now they're playing UNLV, who they already beat at home by 13. They're having to go to Las Vegas for this one, although they're used to it, though they're not going to be distracted by the lights or whatever. But I do think UNLV is going to come into this with a bit more focus here. They just lost fairly ugly at Grand Canyon. Coming back home for this in a revenge spot. They do consider themselves to be the little brother to Reno, to Nevada as well. The money looks like it's coming a little bit on Nevada from a pick'em to a pick'em with juice, but I would look towards UNLV in that one. You might be able to get like 1 point with UNLV there. I would take whatever points, or underdog money line, I guess, is maybe an option there as well, but I like UNLV in that game. All right. Grand Canyon at Utah State. This is an interesting one on Fox Sports 1 at 10 p.m. This Grand Canyon team is not that bad, dude. You know what? I mean, if you want like a flyer in the Mountain West, Grand Canyon could make they could make a statement in the Mountain West tournament, let's say. And even though they're new to this conference tournament, Grand Canyon is coming over from the WAC, and the WAC also plays their conference tournament in Las Vegas, and that's where the Mountain West also plays theirs. So Grand Canyon is not going to come into Las Vegas and get distracted, So if you want to take a flyer on Grand Canyon to win the Mountain West conference tournament, I think that might be a decent shot, man. Grand Canyon, they're coming off a nice win over UNLV. Like I said, they've won 3 of their last 4. They're going to play Utah State. They did already beat Utah State, though, at home by 10. And this is a totally different environment, man, having to go into elevation into Logan, Utah here. Utah State is not going to take them for granted this time. Utah State's coming off a rather ugly loss, which was a huge win for San Diego State, but an ugly loss for Utah State on the road there. So they might bounce back from that. So I do like Utah State in this game against Grand Canyon, even though I think Grand Canyon is a pretty good team, but this is just not the spot for them. I think Utah State will win. I would lean towards laying the points with them as well. They're down to 9.5 here with juice, it looks like, from 10. 75% of tickets, 99% of the cash on Utah State. I do not disagree with that one there. All right. Then we have ESPN, the huge game in the Mountain West between Gonzaga and St. Mary's. Did I miss San Diego State? Hang on. Oh, no, I talked about San Diego State. That was that game against New Mexico. Yeah. I already talked about that game, didn't I? I think I did. Yeah. All right. Anyway, West Coast Conference, Gonzaga, number 9 in the country at St. Mary's on ESPN. Yet, if you look at the number, it looks way too easy to play Gonzaga. Oh, my God. The 9th-ranked team in the country, and it's basically pick the winner at 2.5. It looks way too easy to play Gonzaga here. I know it's a huge game for both teams. It is a pacing, not mismatch, but contrast where, as always, Gonzaga plays fast, St. Mary's plays slow. St. Mary's is going to try to slow the game way down. But Gonzaga is actually a better defensive team than they have been in some of the recent years. So Gonzaga is actually a legit team with some balance this year. I think they are missing one of their better players, though. Huff, I think is his name. I think he's out, but Gonzaga's still playing well. They just got a huge revenge win against Portland, but maybe they don't care that much about that game. But Portland had beaten them earlier in the season, notoriously, and Gonzaga really stuck it to them. And I told you, I liked Gonzaga in the first half of that game because I thought they might start looking ahead, but they covered it all. They covered first half. They covered full game. I think it all won for Gonzaga in that one. But I think they will show up in this game. They did beat St. Mary's at home, but I don't really love the spot for St. Mary's because the setup just isn't that great for them, where they had a huge game against Santa Clara and beat them, and now they have to turn around and put in another huge effort against Gonzaga, where Gonzaga's coming off a game that was over, like, basically right after it started. So I kind of like Gonzaga here, but they are up to a 3-point favorite. Now, the money is coming back on St. Mary's now. 65% of tickets, 93% of the cash on St. Mary's. The money is indicating on St. Mary's now, at least once the line got driven up to 3, maybe some extra value there on St. Mary's. It's not going to be a game I want to play at all. The under might be in consideration because this series, believe it or not, even though Gonzaga plays fast and they're usually very good offensively, this series has gone under, I think, 8 times in a row. And the total has been in this range every one of those times in the 140s. So this total is not out of whack with where it has been in those other games. So I think the under actually makes sense in this game as well. The first game between these two, what was the final? It was 73-65. So that game landed, can I do math anymore? What is that, 138? So yeah, that game went under as well. Like I said, I'm assuming the total was probably actually higher because it was at Gonzaga, so Gonzaga plays faster. So this total probably should be set a little bit lower because St. Mary's at home. They should be able to limit the pace a bit. They slow the game down. So that is one thing that St. Mary's should do. I do like the under in that game and probably prefer that to playing the side, actually. Charles, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. Jeff, you know what? I was wrong because I thought that 2021 year was the year where – wasn't there a year where Oregon State forfeited? I thought it was one of those COVID years where they weren't even in the tournament at all. But the one you're talking about, I think, was 2021. So I don't know. I was thinking of one where they forfeited, and it was a weird thing where VCU, like their first round matchup basically just didn't happen. They were supposed to, and I picked them in my bracket anyway, but they were supposed to play Oregon State, and then their game didn't even happen. And it was a very odd situation where then VCU got a bye basically into the round of 32, and then I'm assuming they didn't do well in the round of 32 because you don't want to have a bye going into that and play against a team that's already played a game and has momentum, I think it was a 7-10 matchup, I want to say, where that happened. I don't remember what game that was, what year that was, but that was a weird spot, man. All right, and then we have ESPN2 as UC Santa Barbara and UC Irvine. These two teams are up near the top of the Big West. UC Santa Barbara did just bounce back against UC Riverside, and we barely got the cover in that one, even though, dude, UC Riverside, there were 2 points in the game where they were down 12, but other than that, they were covering wire to wire. Other than that, they were within 4 points in the final minute and a half of the game, and they lost by 11 somehow. They covered the 11 and a half, but I don't know how that happened, dude. So UC Santa Barbara is coming off a bad effort. Part of that handicap was they'd be looking ahead to UC Irvine. This is going to be a big game for them, although they did already beat UC Irvine at home. UC Irvine is coming off a bigger win, though. They went to Northridge and beat Northridge on the road, and Northridge is one of the competition of theirs near the top of the conference. And UC Irvine had a big game the game before that against UC San Diego as well. So Irvine, they're having to play 3 big games in a row, man. So I don't like how the setup is for UC Irvine in this one. I would prefer Santa Barbara here, coming off a much easier game where they didn't really have a good effort. So I would lean towards taking the points. UC Irvine's a 3-point favorite. It's a low total here. I would probably take the points with UC Santa Barbara there. And that's going to be it, man. Once again, the 5 plays for college basketball today are Buffalo minus the points, Bellarmine plus the points, Bryant plus the points. That one, I think you can get at least 3 on it now. Arizona minus the points. So we do have a couple of favorites in here. And Virginia Tech plus the points. That's going to do it. I will be back shortly to talk about NHL and NBA, and it'll be a lot quicker than this, hopefully. There's not much NBA today, at the very least. We really got to get back on track with the NBA, man. I don't know if I'm skipping it today or not. Probably will have at least one hockey play, which was the only good thing about last night's card, but we will see in a second. I got to handicap all that. I got to do my Instagram videos for this. I'll be back. Peace for now. But, yeah, I'll be right back in not too long. So, thanks, guys, for hanging out. Oh, yeah, Learn to Toad on Twitter, Learn to Toad on Instagram. Like, subscribe, comment on the channel here. Boost this thing up, man. I don't like this slow growth. We want to make a splash somehow. We're on audio as well, Apple, Spotify. You can listen and review over there. Go to Covered in Uke, my Uke channel on YouTube. Check that out. Like, subscribe over there as well. Patreon.com/LearnToToad to throw me some support and get some Uke requests and stuff that I don't do very quickly, especially if I don't know this. If I know the song, I'll be much more apt to do it way more quickly. And then Losercast, of course, every Tuesday. Go check that out, the comedy show that I'm on right now. That's going to do it. Peace for now, and I will be back very shortly with the normal daily show. Peace for the next 20 minutes or so.